It doesn't really belong to me, but it's wonderful. So a real estate agent does nothing, but they can be very psychotic because they do nothing for their money. They do nothing. They do nothing. I've met them. They do nothing. They'll practically admit to you they do nothing for their money. Real estate agents do nothing for their money. There's lots of jobs like police that do nothing. They do nothing, right? And yet, if you're on welfare, people say, "Oh, you're doing nothing." Police do nothing. You ever asked a policeman to define for you what it is they do in a course of a day? You ever found out what they do? Do they do anything? Do they do anything? What do the police do? Somebody fucking tell me, what do they accomplish in the day? And don't give me this shit like, oh, they protect the community, blah, blah, blah. Those are just witchcraft. That's just witchcraft. Yeah, I protect the community too, motherfucker. I'm protecting you right now. I'm a deterrent to people not wanting to work. I should get paid for that. Poor people are a deterrent against being poor. They should get paid. Right? It's ridiculous. You live in a completely ridiculous system, and it's all based on language. So my cousins, they didn't do so good at school necessarily, but they got through, as most people do, because apparently you don't really have to be good at school. And they were good with their hands, like their father, my uncle. They fixed up cars, they got into renovations, they built their own homes, they bought their own homes, they built their own homes. They'll have money the rest of their life. Their dad died before the age of 70 of cancer. Their mom is virtually crazy. But they've got their money, married to their alcoholic wives who abuse them, children with all kinds of learning disabilities, but they've got money to deal with that, and they'll get them out there, right? Really, the answer to all childhood learning disabilities is to turn them into a psychopath. Did you know that? That's how they deal with child. The idea is to give them drugs and stuff to turn them into meth addicts or psychopaths, I like to hear what young people want to do with their lives, especially considering their class. And I've noticed a lot of girls from the middle class and upper middle class, what they want to do with their lives is they want to take criminology. And I start hearing it a lot. You figure, oh, okay, this must be a thing, or they're pushing this or something. And they want to be criminologists. They want to get into the law enforcement, or I don't know what they're offering them to legitimize that. I can't imagine as an intellectual anything more torturous than having to take criminology. I think my ears would bleed every fucking day. And living proof that if you want to know anything about the world, don't go to school. Don't go to school. The only good reason to go to school is to see how fucked up everybody is. To see the biggest possible challenge to the natural aptitudes. Why? Why is that a reasonable opinion? Because that's the way it has to be. There's nothing wrong with that. It has to be because it's managing primates. It has to irritate. It has to give you truth. It's going to irritate any serious intelligence. It's amazing that people don't complain about university. They don't complain about how stupid it is, right? That's why they can do it. Because it's meant to go to the lowest common denominator. The smartest person, the smartest professor at university you can listen to online in any century is going to bring it down to the lowest common denominator. They're basically sophists. They say all kinds of things. You have no idea what you're fucking listening to. It just sounds fucking smart. And then you think you're smarter because you can repeat what they fucking say. Right? When any decent professor would get you to have your own fucking thoughts. They'd say, hey, what the fuck do you think about this? Fucking get your thoughts all fucking organized, because I'm not going to do it for you. But apparently there's no tough love in the education system. I saw green stuff in the fridge. My mom gave me green stuff. It's like, must eat green stuff. Green stuff good. Eat green stuff now. Put green stuff in your food. Green stuff is good. Okay, here it goes. Woo, green stuff, yay. Wilt it, wilt it, wilt it. Un bon bacon, pour faire un machanga. Assez, pode ver, tu vai ver. This down, here. Good. I haven't been to the estuary for a couple of days, so maybe I'll go and drop off a little peanut butter snack for my. I've got to get a proper fucking cutting board. This thing is basically deformed over the years. Oh. Yes. Come on. There we go. That would give me an excuse to go and get some chocolate bars and whatnot. Yeah. So middle class people and poor people will interact with me, and they don't really know, to be fair, who they're dealing with, or at least the intelligence who they're dealing with, because in all fairness to them, most people's intelligence, smart as they may be, has been uniformly mutilated. So I'm not the smartest person in the world in many, 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 many ways. But I am smart in a way that a lot of people aren't smart. And it's not particular to me, I think it's just particular to the human immune system. In other words, humans all on some level have my level of intelligence. They have something which questions everything no matter what. Because ultimately you don't want to die. Right? You're the guy in the movie who doesn't want to die, but the movies are bad reference because movies are, again, all about dumbing you down. Right? They give you a very complicated, they're like the world, they give you a very complicated but very dumb thing. But nobody's cynical. No one approaches the movies as a cynic, so they don't see all that. They don't teach cynicism in school. Not just criticism, but cynicism, because if the primates are being ruled, however well, you can see that there's always a market for cynicism, because it's weird that cinema has no cynicism. Right? Once you start getting cynical, people say, oh, it's just a movie. Man, it's just a movie. And it's like, but it's like these movies occupy millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of human minds. But once you start getting cynical, it's just TV and it's just a movie. So you see the effect that it has on people. I would teach that cynicism is always in style. If you feel like looking into the mortifying effects of the however wonderful world that you live in, because the people that rule you have to take care of millions and millions of primates, or so they would have you believe, and okay. Clean, 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 clean. Now, oh, wallet. Okay, so we've got a clean amount of food made. Oh, back. Okay. Yeah. Um, the interesting difficulty, I mean, every job has an interesting difficulty to it. It's just that combined with the interesting difficulty of my job, such as I defined it for myself, without any particular monetary remuneration. Remuneration? Remuneration. Reyes monopoly. Um, is that most people who talk, who do a job that has a lot of intellectually dominant or abstract dominant, communication dominant, opinion dominant, if you will, and also you could say I'm in a pretty extremely casual environment. But it's as casual and as difficult as any environment could possibly be. I mean, here I am, I'm on the internet, I'm in a house somewhere in the world, I'm in an apartment. I can be honest about my suffering, I can be honest that there's nothing casual about my environment. However casual it is, there are pressures, there are bounds. I woke up, feeling things about my father, mother, griefs, and things that, again, on that subject of, I am a failure at loving my parents, and yet was given the task of loving two people who had never been loved, and who couldn't really love me. And on some level, probably feel a failure at loving my own parents. My father's only story about his father was that he got him a new pair of pajamas before his father passed away. And that was all he ever said about his dad. And you could see that my dad felt very proud and very consoled in that he did this for his father. He loved his father. He proved to himself he loved his father. His father, in a state of distress and moving into the next life, as it were, to be relieved of all of his suffering after his difficult life in England in the 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s. A human life. My grandfather. My father's, and here I am living in a world that might as well be heaven compared to my grandfather's life. With all my difficulties, I might as well be in heaven compared to my grandfather, right? I think he deserves to be here. See, and my dad and all his emphasis on family, a lot of people, they don't understand the way a witch thinks. They don't understand the way a warlock thinks. A warlock thinks like an animal, and that animal knows that the animals of man are being controlled, and that animal knows that. There is no rebellion. There is no fucking revolution. There's a billion people who are my enemy, who work for God every day of their lives, and will never fucking be able to get outside of that, no matter what. You can think outside the box. You can go to a fucking space station. You can fuck your way around the internet until you're back. You can take any drug in the world, and you're never going to fucking leave the prison. Because it takes fucking work and intelligence. And you don't really leave. You just understand it for what it is. You see it for what it is. You see it where you can see it for what it is. Human life. Day to day. Mothers, fathers, children. My father's greatest act of love for his father was buying him some new pajamas to die in. And then his need for his father was his need to at least control something, to do the right thing. No one else was there to ask my father how he felt in his life. I'm sure no one ever asked my dad how he felt about anything his entire life. I've never asked him how he felt about anything. The child doesn't do that, doesn't say, hey dad, how do you feel? I mean, it can, but in a family where feeling isn't emphasized, and that intelligence or that way of communicating, if not that intelligence, because the intelligence of feeling comes by communicating feelings and living in an atmosphere where communication is something that is free and safe. So when I was 2.5 years old, I saw the look of grief on my father's face when he came out of the bathroom after learning that his mother had passed away. And I don't really see the look on his face. I just know as a child, I knew that something was wrong and my dad was sad. And yet, from that age of 2 onward, nobody ever asked me how I felt, and I never built up any repertoire of what emotions were. It was only in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now that I learned a little bit about my dad's relationship with his mother. The little I can get from my mother, who's also a psychopath. So try getting information about reality from a psychopath. You can, but you have to look through what they're telling you. You have to see patterns, because most average working class psychopaths aren't trying to mislead you. They just don't know the truth. And they constantly need to make up stories that at the very least gratify their own sense of personal survival. Just like most people. So in my life, I gave up the prestige of amounting some kind of level of success in personal survival. So I gave up that. I don't have any friends. I have no social survival. I have no social viability. I don't have sex. I've never had sex. I have no sexual viability. I have no class viability, rank viability. The only thing I have is, if you look at me, young girls and old women think that I'm pretty and want to fuck me, or at least go through the motions of fantasizing about that man. That's what I get. You might think, I actually enjoy that sometimes, because it gives me a sense of identity. It means I'm somebody. The brain can't help but be flattered when a young girl stops and starts. It looks like, she's ejaculating into her underwear when she sees you. You'd be like, and it is, as they get older, it feels more and more gross. Now, I don't do anything to get this behavior. It's just how they're responding, like a lot of their dogs and animals, to the fact that they're encountering a real man. A real man. Not the biggest man, the strongest man, but an honest, viable human entity who looks a certain way to them, based on what they've seen on TV or whatever is attractive to them. And also, in this really sick sense, is that young girls are attracted to me for some of the right reasons. Because they still have an ounce of decency in them, but it's being sexualized so much, and they're sexualized so much, that to see a decent man who's relatively okay looking in the imagination of a young girl, you might say, to look at me, that young girl might as well be drunk. And it's true. I don't think young girls see me in proportion. I'm not a particularly attractive human being, in as much as a 40-year-old woman who's like a professional lawyer or police officer would look at me and be like, and they would look a little more deeply into my clothes and my manner, behavior, and maybe they'd watch a few YouTube videos before they decided that they were attracted to me. Women can be attracted to my intelligence, but you have to understand that women's main goal in life is money. That's according to the financial system. So if you want a woman to be honest with you at all, you need to find someone who's able to think outside of the financial system, which basically means a poor person. My only chance of having a mate would be to find a very poor woman who's had enough problems in life and is intelligent enough that she can acknowledge the prison that people live in, while maintaining a respect for the kinds of sentimental and truly viable levels of desire and hunger and connection that we need with our mothers, our fathers, people we love, people we care about, people whose lives and highs and lows matter to us. Enough that, in my case, that I've had nothing to do to care for my parents except to worry about such things, because they didn't set up a level of communication with me where they could be cared about, because they've never been cared about, and they don't care about anyone else. It's, I say psychopaths, but it's not like they're bad people. It's just that in the financial system, nobody can really care about anybody. It's very fucking hard to do. You ever wondered what it takes to care about someone? How are there any books out there? What caring looks like? We have cameras that go inside women's vaginas so you can see what it's like to fuck them up the ass. But we don't have any good numbers and logistics on how people care and how people who are cared for feel, because you're not going to find anyone who's honest. I've been around women and men in palliative care. They won't tell you how absolutely hopeless being cared about has been in their entire life. And yet you can see that their whole life has been a struggle. That the people they're often married to, believe it or not, don't fucking care about them. They have marriages of convenience. They have roommates they've learned to put up with. They have a basic doggerel level of survival because the way they live isn't as bad as it could be. That's the average person. You understand? And that's why nobody wants to listen to these things. That's why you can't have this conversation. It's why that I'm talking to no one in particular. Because there's absolutely no academics on this. There's nothing. You don't have any kind of public forums on this type of information, because even the people are like, I think society is controlled by Nazis and we need to fucking destroy everything. They don't want to have this conversation. They'd rather have their fantasy of being able to destroy the Illuminati and restore peace on the earth and the flat earth or something. People will do anything not to be honest. Do you ever think what would happen if someone really turned powerful emotions and a powerful intellect upon themselves in their life, and they came from a relatively poor middle-class family, and what they would think about? Well, I'm that person. I'm stupid enough to think that it's actually worth something. That's the part I love the best. I'm going to go out today. I'm going to go to an estuary. It's basically a provincial park where a river runs out into the ocean. And I've been sexually assaulted there by middle-class people who were paid all of their lives by your fucking economic system to take care of children. You understand? The level of pathology in the working classes, especially teachers, by the way, especially teachers. If you're a teacher, please contact me. I want to study you. I want to study you. If you're a teacher, if you know teachers, I want to study you. I've got questions I want to ask. I think teachers should be studied and to learn about the animal population and to learn about, with no fear of prosecution, what you've been doing all of your life to children. I would love to find out and how much you love children, right? There's a woman walking around, her name's Sue. I'm pretty sure she's a pedophile. She worked at the library until they closed down, and she would often tell stories to children you could hear. And the only time I really ever heard her expressing any emotion was when she was reading children's stories. Like, what do these people do? And they've worked in libraries their whole lives. They've got their retirement, whatever. But they're still the same person they were when they were 15 years old. Which is not bad entirely. And that you can be the same person you were when you were 5, 15, and I advocate for that. But that person, right, and the person they are now isn't aware of themselves. Or if awareness itself maybe is, as the word suggests, a kind of war. I don't think self-awareness is what we think it is. Should a self-aware person be wary? Yeah, this is basically a normal beginning of my day. Rolling joints, 3 in number. Let's go. Ugh. So let's go and be a good poor person today. There's all these clouds and now they're gone. It's like, what happened to them? Get my coffee in the bag here. Coffee in the bag. I'm slowly sleeping. Coffee in the bag. It's slowly creeping. Okay. Coffee in the bag. Coffee in the